Been so busy working for my freedom. Been so busy working for my freedom. Been so busy working for my freedom. Ain't got time to die. I spend all my time working for my freedom. All my time working, all my time. Ain't got time to die. Been so busy, been so busy now. Been so busy, ain't got time to die. Ain't got time to die. Good evening. Name's Uncle Ben. I'm going to do a little storytelling whilst I'll make us a little supper. Share a few narratives, small rivers of Negro folks' lives. You see, these narratives don't have to begin with once upon a time. You see, in some narratives, time don't sit nowhere. It hops around like a bunny, like old Brer Rabbit. Time will trick you up if you try to put too heavy coat around it. So we're just going to step into these narratives and let them flow with us and in us. Get ourselves to that other knowingness, that quiet place your mother taught you about. You find me? Sometimes if you truly want to hear a thing, you got to turn up the silence. And if you want to hear something about America, Uncle Ben's don't recommend slicing into that old apple pie. I'd allow, have yourself instead a bowl of beans and rice. You know, every time I hear tell America is a melting pot, I'm never sure we're talking about what's inside the pot or the pot itself. Look at this here jar. You can fix these beans any way you want. Got your black beans on the bottom, red beans on top, brown beans, the pinto beans, and at the very top we got your great northern white beans. Or you can flip it, and well, you see. And you turn it on its side, and you have them living shoulder to shoulder, first among equals, in harmony. It's all a matter of how you perceive a thing. Now, when you go to that pot to feed yourself, listen. You can put the beans on the bottom of the bowl and the rice on top, or you can put the rice on the bottom of the bowl and ladle a spoon or two of beans on top of it. However you fix that bowl, you done started a conversation, a dialogue with America, and those beans will compel you to listen, to turn up the silence by any beans necessary. My daddy's father, we called him Granddaddy, would often leave me a little written note neath my bowl at supper time. A little written note with a question or two for me to ponder. A little written note in his best linked up letters. Granddaddy would say, God likes you when you work, and he loves you when you sing. And when you're eating, especially with your home folks, well, now that's the time to let your mind wander over a thing. Work a notion round to its best shine. Something for the belly and something for the head. It'd be these times round the table, Granddaddy would say this. He'd say, Burns, you ought to be about some good thinking while you're eating. Because that's surely the time the two angels of grace and no mercy sojourn the earth looking for folks to take with them. Of course now, the angel of grace gonna celebrate you if you done bless that food with some good thinking. But if you was to die while you're eating and not be doing some good thinking to go along with that good eating, well, quite naturally, the angel of no mercy will take that as an invitation to make a house call. Visit you at your door knock and away with you to hell. If I'm lying, I'm flying. These times around the table, Granddaddy would say this. He said, Ben, God likes you when you work, and he loves you when you sit. So, Granddaddy would always leave me a little written note with a question or two for me to ponder, to keep me in shiny shoes with the angel of grace. A little question or two for me to ponder for my knowledge. Knowledge. What you know, that is in the heart. And the ledge or ledger, that is the mind. And I don't mind to tell you, Uncle Ben's is here this evening to share some narratives about some aunties and uncles you may not remember. Some you may know about and some you should. We're going to story tell these folks right around this here table. Now, some call it tall telling, getting up off the seat, make a praise, testifying, lying, chanting, oral books, and signifying. But it's all for our knowledge, you find me? And to know the ledger. And the ledger is also life. And what sits well on the very large plate of life in a bowl of beans and rice. There have been some black men, Negro men, uncles, as I am called, who decided or arrived at the understanding that you could either buck the bullwhip of the master and the knocks of life and receive beatings consistent with those you give someone you were trying to put near death or beyond hope. Or you could bend with that master and that life and that evilness that was slavery, slavery of the mind and bigotry of the heart, bend with it and survive trouble that was worse than a misery, trouble that should have truly made you blind with bitterness and rage till you passed over. Now, Uncle Ben's was never converted. I just learned and learned hard how to flow with life, bend with it. I just try to make my way in this more than half crazy world with more than a half pound of dignity. I marshaled every ounce of myself and determined a half pound of dignity was better than no dignity at all. And faced with that equation, well, you do the arithmetic. So, I want to acquaint you with some of these men's that bend and these aunties who mend. Uncle Ben's have an honor roll call here for some of these uncles. Wait a second. Let me get started on this extroverted rights. I remember looking in the Bible one day and asking Granddaddy what came before the Last Supper. He replied, lunch. Granddaddy had what you call a salt of humor, because he seasoned up everything he say and do with a pinch of laughter. That was Granddaddy. And since he had no habit of untruths, I took it to be so. That was my habit of happiness, Granddaddy's laughter. Okay, we stir him up. See those beads over there? You put a tight fire beneath these beads, season them up well, cook them for a day and a half. They'd be good enough to make you want to slap your mama and drink all the pot liquor at the bottom of the bowl and leave the beans. I would not recommend this, of course. Now, normally beans are seasoned with salt back and cured pork. But there's no meat in these beans because I know most of y'all's is Sagittarians. So here we go. A few names on Uncle Ben's honor roll call. First name on the honor roll, whoops. First name on the honor roll is Uncle Remus. He be the one that used to be on the bottle of the black strap molasses, used to fool with old Brer Rabbit. Brer Rabbit was always tricking folk and coming up on the sunny side of life. Uncle Remus carried a rabbit's foot on his person for 85 years and was buried with it on his 103rd birthday, which was exactly 2 days before the devil found out he was in hell. Uncle Remus figured hell was a good enough place to spend eternity. He'd know most of the people there anyway. Besides, rabbit was always on the menu, and it roasted up good with all that fire and brimstone. Next on the honor roll is Uncle Tom, possibly the onlyest uncle with more renown than Uncle Ben. Now, most of y'all place Uncle Tom's place of residence as the cabin. But the truth of the situation, he was the house nigger of Harriet Beecher before she married Mr. Stowe. Old Tom and she took to lying down together after her husband died. They were the first beans and rice couple in the South. Harriet's proclamation was this novel that she wrote, and Uncle Tom's emancipation was her surrender. Next on the honor roll is Jim Crow. Uncle Jim, he was a big nigger, weighed about as much as half a bale of cotton. He was banana-colored, high yellow, so he could easily scoff at them laws that was to bear his name. He used to perform minstrels in blackface for white folk, often on bended knee. He was a spy. He especially liked performing for the KKK, the Night Riders. He was a spy, our spy. He tipped many a colored when the Night Riders were planning a lynching party. He was our fly in the buttermilk. He sang on one knee, your grandpa and my grandpa sitting by the fire. Your grandpa to my grandpa, I'm gonna set your house on fire. Talking about, hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now, aiku, aiku, aihu, ooh, Giacomo Feno, aiku, Giacomo Fena, eh. Your grandpa and my grandpa standing round the fire. Your grandpa told my grandpa, I'm gonna lynch your ass on fire. Talking about hey now, hey now, hey now, hey now. Aiku, 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 Giacomo Feno, aiku, Giacomo Fena. Next on Uncle Ben's honor roll is the Reverend William Battle. Uncle Willie, he be the one on the cream of wheat box. He sang the blues. Sang the blues Thursday through Saturday night. He threw the house out the window every Saturday night. He had to bed to sing the blues. Next on the honor roll is Stephen Fetch, Rochester, Amos, and Andy, a trinity of black bending men who showed us all how to bend at the waist with laughter. Next on the honor roll is Jimmy Back, Shoe Black, Shoe Shine Boy, a job all of us, every one of us uncles has did, and we liked it. It was the kind of job where you could spit at a white man all day long and have him tip you for it. Jimmy Back will be here shortly to give you a shine a little later on. Next on our honor roll is the Pullman Porters, and one such was Flintall Jones. He worked as a chef in the dining car on the railroad. He'll be here directly to share his flapjack recipe. You know, I just added 2 names to my list. Colin Powell and Clarence Thomas. 2 trains running. Not necessarily to my station, but we done traveled a heap of miles when you got a colored on the one hand, being the head chief of all the guns in this country, and on the other hand, a colored judge sitting now, drawing up the laws to ensure that we can continue to use them. Now that's some travel. We may find out in the very next future just how far and how fast these 2 trains are allowed to go. Just something to ponder. You know, I'm always steady adding to my list. If you have any recommendations, let me know. Let us all know. Flintall Jones, railroad man. My daddy worked in a boiler room shoveling coal on the Baltimore, Ohio. That was the train what brought Lincoln to Gettysburg in 1863 to give his address. 14 months later, my daddy was on that same train what carried Lincoln's body from Washington, D.C. back to Springfield, Illinois. I was born on the day the great emancipator died, April 15th, 1865. I miss being a slave by a minute. I first worked the rails down in Arkansas, the Texarkana line. I worked in the boiler room like my daddy, but we was using fuel oil by that time. Made my way north, eventually began working the Pullman car on the Chicago Penn Great Northern, till about 31. During the Depression, I moved into the kitchen. First, I was just making mess for the crew. I moved into the kitchen because I was getting on in years and I didn't feel like doing all that running to and fro. Then I moved on to the lunch and breakfast shift in the dining car, which I thought was going to be my last assignment on the Great North. But there was this Bliss Kennedy, a white supervisor who ran the dining car like an overseer. And though I was 40 years his senior and been with the railroad near about as many years as he was born, he cut me no truck and gave me even less respect. Also, I think he had his drawers in a knot because the food on the dining car had been written up in the New York Times newspaper. And though they didn't mention me by name, the article entirely credited the kitchen with the excellence in the dining car. I remember one morning in 1932 having worked a solid 12 hours without a break. I had covered the late evening shift for the other chef, a man called Southern. Southern was out with the backing, the cat house time, and I was in the middle of the breakfast rush. I had told Kennedy I needed a break. He could get off my feet. But he pretended not to hear me and continued to have the other porters deliver their breakfast requests in no relief. So I stayed to my post, study cooking all manner of eggs, 2 kinds of hash brown, corned beef, and plain, Indian meal pancakes, cheese grits, and biscuits with country gravy, which personally I thought was redundant. Gravy was gravy, whether I made it in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, or Philadelphia, PA. But country gravy was how it was read on the menu. Anyway, it's about 9 o'clock, so it'll be another hour or so before we do in D.C. My bladder is about to burst. Just then, Kennedy comes in and tells me we're going to have some important folks traveling on and that I got to stay to grill. I didn't say anything to him. I just nodded, cut my eyes back to the grill, sucked the air between my teeth, and continued to cook. After about 15 more minutes, I couldn't take it any longer. I didn't look up or down, left nor right. I begged the pardon of the Lord, unzipped my trousers, and relieved myself in the remaining pancake batter, which I quickly now set underneath the grill, squeezed a lemon, and wiped my hands on my head. Just then, Kennedy comes in and tells me the important folks that just got on the train is none other than Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his crew. He had just won the election, landslide victory over Hoover, which was bound to be an improvement. I had seen my fill of Hooverville camps along the rail. Anyway, Kennedy tells me that the new president wants some breakfast with a special order of my Indian meal pancakes. He had read about them in the New York Times newspaper, too. I told him if they hold on a second, I'll make up a fresh batch. Kennedy wasn't studying me. He reached beneath that grill, took a hold to that batter, and commenced to spoon and cakes on that griddle. I told him the batter was sour, and if he'd just wait a second, I'll make up a fresh batch. He pretended not to hear me and continued cooking those cakes. He asked me to hand him a plate. So when he got the pancakes stacked on the plate, I accidentally dropped it. Kennedy pushed me out of the way and over my objections, made some more pancakes and took them straight out to Mr. Roosevelt. Now, I'd like to be able to tell y'all that the president came back to tell me that those were the best pancakes he ever ate. But that wasn't the occurrence. What happened was his wife Eleanor came back to thank me. We talked for a while, nice talk, and she asked me how long before we do in D.C. I told her about a half hour. She said, well, in a half hour, she'd be hiring a new chef for the White House, and that it'd be her personal honor if I'd consider working for her and the new president on the upcoming year. Well, after that, on a number of occasions, Mr. Roosevelt would come into the kitchen in his wheelchair to tell me his satisfaction with the meal. Sometimes he'd inquire why the pancakes tasted a little different than the ones he had on the tray. I just told him it must have been the blush of his new victory and that the griddles on the tray were older and more seasoned than the ones at Pennsylvania Avenue. grandmother, we called her Mimi. The older folks called her Miss Mary, but we children called her Mimi, said there were very few things in life that couldn't be made better with a little butter. And those that couldn't be, she didn't want to fool with. So, we're going to add a little butter to our rice. I call this butter a boneless beef dinner. We stir them in there like that. Maybe down just a little bit. New York City. Jimmy back at 15. Shoeshine boy. Living in New York City sometime just after World War II. It's always been my high purpose in life to be like my father. Not so much for the things he did, but for who he was. My father is not what you call a remarkable man, no. He had at most a 6th grade education. He did not try to move mountains or change the world in that way. He did, however, change our world when he went to the United States. I don't remember one single day of joy during the 3 years my father was away. My father had gone to work with his brother Price at the Peerless Laundry Factory in New York City. Uncle Price, in turn, would let my father stay with him while he raised enough money for my mother and me to travel back to the U.S. But after the first month, my father quit that job because the foreman kept on calling my father boy. And since my father knew himself to be the head of a loving family back in Kingston, Jamaica, he had initially ignored the foreman. But this man persisted in trying to make my father feel like less than a man. You see, my father believed all jobs are honorable and that every man is deserving of respect regardless of the labor. A black man, even in New York City in 1931, could not simply walk off a job and had any expectation of finding another job anytime soon. But my father left, quit, directly got himself a cardboard box, burnt some cork and linseed oil for shoe polish, made buff and rubbing rags out of 2 of the 3 shirts my mother had packed for him, and set up shop, shining shoes down the block from the Peerless Laundry. Mr. Perry's Shoe Shine. My father, how about this shot? My father had worked hard to raise enough money for my mother and me to travel back to the U.S. When we all 3 got back to the U.S., my father took on 2 more jobs to pay for our 1-bedroom, 6th-floor walk-up in East Harlem. My father had found a way to make the vision of the day. He did not want a day to pass without us sharing a meal together as a family. Sometimes it would be between the first and the second job, sometimes between the second and the third. My father did not want one day to pass without us seeing his face. If he missed a meal, he'd wake my mother and me. My mother would laugh like a little girl at these midnight front room picnics. I think my father was always borrowing hours from the previous morning of the upcoming day just to fit it all in. Somehow he did. He would hug us so strong, next one. He would hug us so strong, if there was trouble on his brow, you never saw it. If there was not enough money to buy big Christmas, you would not know it by looking at the bottom of our tree. I remember going back to school after summer break, there was only enough money to buy new school shoes. My mother had hemmed a pair of hand-me-down trousers. Our downstairs neighbor, Mr. Neal, had given her for me. There you go. The pants were so wide, they wiggled when I walked. The kids at school teased me and called them Jello pants. And they teased me every time I wore those pants, and I wore them nearly every single day. My father told me, just tell them that my uncle was in the circus and that these were his clown outfit pants. Yeah, you're next. Come on. There are so many things I got from my father. Is that right?
Probably not.
There are so many things I got from my father. So many things I would like to give him back. Like the time I asked him how to spell a word, he didn't know and he was embarrassed. Or the time he held me when I burned down the garage behind our apartment. He should have given me a whooping. I wished he had. Next one. It's okay. When I was 8 and I couldn't figure out how to throw the baseball, I was sitting on the steps of our apartment. My father was playing with Colonel Jackson Jr. I think I stuck my tongue out at my father. I think I said a bad word toward him, too. My father saw that I was not happy, and he threw me a wink, which was bigger than that baseball. As I grew older, I realized the thing that would make my father the happiest, the most glad on his face, is when I would talk to him. He would just sit there in his chair, tilted a little forward, his head to the side, with a little smile on his lips. He did it with such care and concentration, like a fourth job. All jobs are honorable. There you go. My father died in the war, protecting a man named Mr. MacArthur. He saved his life in service for the country that was his adopted home. They gave my father a Purple Heart, which they gave to my mother. And right after this, many of our relatives and our neighbors started saying, it was like my father was back. So I took that as my name, Jimmy Beck. Yesterday, just yesterday, a woman said to me, I don't get many women customers. She said, it was a pleasure to have met you, particularly since I would not be shining shoes very long. I asked her why she said this. She said, because I did it so well. She thanked me again and said, said, your father must be very proud. She tipped me a whole $1 and left. Huh? I'm so glad she saw my father. Mama, Mutt dear, Mimi, Auntie, these women lift and on their mammy shoulders hold up more than half the sky. These aunties made themselves more than pillow toward the care and comfort and hope of an entire people. We're going to sit with one of them a little while. Aunt Tanny, Tennessee. She bends like an oak. Girl, I heard what you asked me. I just thinking about my husband. My first husband. Lynch. Yeah, Lynch. Right outside the screen door. Over yonder. Exactly 26 feet from this here rock. I used to count my steps from here to where that magnolia tree used to be. That was the tree where Rufus Dirt and Charles Henry collected my husband down from that bough. And I stood to go, asleep, unable to speak. I messed myself. I felt the urine running down my leg. Sunday morning, early November, round about harvest time, roots and potatoes.
Mr. Parker swinging from that old nose tree. What a bitter harvest that was. That's the reason why I don't allow anything grow around here get any taller than boots on a chicken. I had roofers cut down all the trees after that. Sold most of the wood, kept enough for the casting. The rest, I used me on the fence. As you can see, it's still standing. Girl, my left eye is jumping this evening. I'm cold. I'm always cold. That's the reason why I keep me on 2-3 sweaters. Even in summer, I have to keep my head wrapped too. Dr. Man told me I have sugar. I ain't studying here. He told the same thing to R.H. and he never once looked at her stool. Girl, I was just thinking about my first love. Mr. Parker. He's the one that took my first flowers. He was a fine colored man, as dark as 4 days morning. His fingernails was dark, like they'd been dipped in tar. His eyes had that yellow tint to them. When I looked at him and he looked at me, girl, I knew I wanted to carry his babies from here to Revelations. I rolled my eyes in the direction where he was standing, and we jumped the broom that very next evening. We had us 3 children. I was carrying my last, Caleb, and Mr. Parker died. While I was carrying, he'd honey talk me to sleep most evenings. He'd place his hands on my belly and commence to sing softly. He sang, and I know it made him feel relieved. This quilt I used to wrap Mr. Parker in when he cut him down from that tree. A month later, I used it to wrap Caleb in. He looked just like his daddy. Had Mr. Parker's smile. I turned my husband's picture toward the wall after he died to spare my children. My mama learned me how to stitch this here quilt. And I done kept hold to it since before my first marriage. Would make it well over 70 years old. I reckon I'll be buried. I almost gave it away 2 years ago to my young friend Larry Garr. He was the choir master at the church. First 10 years Larry led us, I always stood to the front. I was mighty proud to sing in the choir too. See, my friend Larry, he didn't sit with women, which wasn't a problem for the congregation. Not until his friend in Memphis took low sick in '84, and I couldn't do a thing for him. I tried my root doctoring on Larry's friend. His name was D'Artagnan Curtis. He was bright, very helpful. He's good to women, even better to men. Well, he came to our church, joined the choir. The whole congregation was uplifted by his singing. He could rightly minister a song. After a year, it became clear to all the sisters in the church that D'Artagnan was not going to pick any of their flowers. This did not set too well with them, but that was the contention. He set too well with Mr. Larry Garr. But anyway, he started dropping weight. He didn't keep anything on his stomach. I thought he had pellagra or Vincent's angina, which I couldn't understand in my root doctor. I blew my breath down his throat and made him drink a broth of pine tar and dead fish scales. I made him a poultice of John the Conqueror root. Looked like it was going to take hold. It didn't work. He kept on dropping. After he'd been low sick for about a while, one day he said he's hungry. He said he wants some whole cake and some hopping john and some grapes. He said he have a taste for food. Well, I marks it down. Any time anybody been way low sick like D'Artagnan, and they suddenly have a taste for food, that ain't nothing but death's appetite wanting to get fed. He died 3 days later. In his sleep. Jim. Larry was at his bed foot when his friend died. I leaved him to sleep. Jim. Well, it was hard. Church didn't want to have a service for that boy. You see, Larry's friend, he died of AIDS. You ever heard of such? Calling a death disease AIDS. I heard of teachers' aides and nurses' aides. Shoot, I've been one myself, but this AIDS is only an aid on the undertaker. I told the pastor if they didn't have a service for that boy, I'd put a haint on the church and the congregation. His meanness, pure, deep, simple meanness in the house of the Lord. I didn't want to bless the pastor in such a way, but I could not tolerate it. I would not tolerate it. I knew what I was talking about, haints and the meanness. When mean folks die, devil don't want them in a bad place either. He don't want to fool with all that meanness. He make his witches out of them. You see, one thing about a witch, she got to count everything before she crosses. You put a broom across your door at night, and that witch got to count every straw in that broom before she can come in. I'm lying, I'm flying. Well, we had the service. I was walking down the aisle with Larry on my right arm. He was crying hard. So was I. I could feel their stares on the back of our head as we made our way to the front of the church. We sat down in the front row. Pastor Bates gave a sermon which ended in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, Hollywood be thy name. Girl, Hollywood be thy name. I reached over to pinch Larry to keep from laughing. I was none too successful. He beat me to the laugh through his tears. And we, both of us bowed our heads and laughed through the rest of the Lord's Prayer and the offering. See, Larry, he stayed with me in my back room and paid me a little something each month. For the last 12 years, he lodged there. He died last year. Same complaint what took D'Artagnan. I was to bury him in this here quilt. But some friends of his told me there's a quilt in capital D.C. as big as 5 football fields called the Memorial. I calls it the memory place. I never seen it, but it feels truthful. So I cut my quilt in two and I stitched Larry's name and his friend's name. Larry's favorite cornbread recipe on one side. But on the other side they put toward the ground, I put the words of his favorite hymn. If I treat my neighbor right, I know that heaven will be my reward. If I treat my father right, I know that heaven will be my reward if I treat my brother right. I know that heaven will be my reward if I treat my mother right. I know that heaven will be my reward if I treat my sister right. I know that heaven will be my reward. Aunt Tanny went on home on her 98th birthday. So many people showed to the funeral, they had to move it to her house. There were dozens of mourners sitting along the fence. She'd have liked that. Like that fence. She's standing still now, but she's still standing. Her memory is strong in me like an oak. When I was a child, on the third Thursday of every month, my Uncle Roy, my father's brother, my father, and my granddaddy all went to the Masonic Lodge. This black order of Freemasons was different than the white order of Freemasons in that they had a sister lodge of black women called the Eastern Star. These women, like the deaconesses in the church, always wore white uniforms, even at family picnics. And they always stood erect, with their right hand behind them, resting at the small of the back. Elder Ira Lee, the blind lodge master, who decided at the age of 15 to remain unsighted after witnessing the lynching of his twin brother in Liberty, Mississippi. I hear tell, first time Elder Ira Lee saw himself in the mirror after his brother's death, his eyes abandoned their sense and refused thereafter to see. Now, when I was a child, every Saturday night, Elder Ira would come to our house for Saturday night fish fry, and somehow, don't know how, he could always tell what color sweater I had on, or how many stripes I had across the front of my shirt. This tickled my Uncle Roy to no end, who'd say, "Little Bears, I'll run you for that sweater. Or Little Benz, those new shoes you got there, I'll run you for them." Sometimes my Uncle Roy would table shout some folk tales. He would say, "Bears, let me tell you about the world that the devil made up. Have you ever noticed, little Bears, how hot it gets in August?" I know you have. Well, I'll tell you the reason. It's because that's the month that the devil do all of his cooking for the whole year. And he just creates quite a fire down below. On this one particular August, little bear, the devil had cooked up a mess of food. All kinds of Sagittarian dishes. And before he knew it, he had 1,000 plates and pots to wash and a couple of spoons. He said, "I don't feel like doing all this washing up. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to heaven, get me some angels back in here, and have them clean up." So he went outside his kitchen, fastened his door shut, and he went on up to heaven. He knew the way, little Benz. He used to live there. So all people. And he gets to heaven, and he sees hundreds of angels standing by the pearly gates. So he comes up on him and goes, whoa! Takes 100 in his right arm, 100 in his left arm, 100 in his tail, and 100 in his mouth. He heads back to his house, and just as he get near his door, he see this man, little Benz, and the man says, "Hey, devil, is that some angels you got in your mouth?" And the devil said, "Yes." And 100 angels fell out, little Benz. So he tried to grab them with his right arm, and they fell out there. And he tried to grab them with his left arm, and they fell out there. He tried to grab them with his tail, and they fell out there. And the devil said, "Damn, I'll be damned." Now, Benz, the devil could say that. I still got to do this washing up. I know. I'm going to go around the backside of heaven, get me some more angels. So the devil, off we went to the backside of heaven, and there was thousands of them back there taking a cigarette break, don't you know? So he said, hey, angels, look over there. It's the Son of Man. The angel said, oh, Jesus. He grabbed 100 in his right arm, grabbed 100 in his left arm, 100 in his tail, and 250 in his mouth. But he went on back to his house, and just as he get near his door, he see that same fool man, little Ben, and the man say, oh, hey, devil, is that some more angels you got in your mouth? And the devil said, mm-hmm. And that's the word, little Benz, that the devil made up. Mm-hmm. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Little Benz, let me tell you how the people got their color. God created the heaven and the earth, and Gabriel, with his trumpet, he wanted to hear a little jazz, don't you know? And he said, this is good. And he sat down. He said, but I'm kind of lonely. And Gabriel said, well, you know, Lord. And God said, call me God. And Gabriel said, well, you know, God, why don't you create some people? God said, yes. So he got up, took a big mound of clay and seasoned it up just like he liked it, don't you know? And he kneaded it and he let it rise. He kneaded it some more and let it rise. And then he made 100 million people and he set them along the fence to dry. And he said, this is good. And they sat down and said, Gabriel, they're not saying anything. And Gabriel said, well, you know, Lord, I mean, God, you didn't give them any mouths. I said, oh. So he got up, gave him 100 mouths, and 100 pairs of eyes, and while he was there, he gave him the whole complement. Nose, ears, feet, toes, fingers, and before you know it, folks were just singing and talking, telling stories and jokes and gossip, trading recipes. Then before you know it, they started fighting and fussing and saying he said and she said, and God said, I can't take all this pressure, and he flung them, all 100 million, to the four corners of the earth. He said, this is good. I'm still lonely. Tell you what, Gabriel, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, sharp. You call all the people back and I will give them their color. 7 o'clock rolled around, God looked to his left and to the east, and he said, I'll make y'all yellow people. Boom, this is good. He looked to his right and to the south, and he said, I'll make y'all red people. Boom, this is good. Folks coming up on the rear there, I'll make y'all brown people. Boom. There was a great multitude in the center, and he said, well, I'll make y'all white people. Boom, this is good. He said, Gabriel, is that everybody? And Gabriel said, well, you know, Lord, I mean, God, there are some people still sleeping down by the river. God said, you better blow your horn and get those people here. Gabriel got up, took his horn, went and blew it by the river. He said, you people better get up. It's 7:02. God is handing out color. You be fussing and fighting, carrying on, raising. Said, you better get up. And they got up and said, we want our color. We demand our color. We have as much right to color as anybody else. They started running back to heaven. There were so many of them, don't you know? And the ones in front started leaning, and the ones in back came up the rear, and they started bumping into the ones in front. Then they started bumping into God's throne and knocking him over, and God stood up and said, get back, get back. And the people said, get black, get black. And man, that's how the people got their color. My Uncle Roy would tell me that story a dozen times within inside of an hour, and I'd laugh every single time I told him. That was Uncle Roy. Brother White, Reverend William Battle, Uncle Willie, from Fort Worth, Texas, an area called the Bottom. He had to learn to wait on the Lord. He could preach. Yes, he could. He'd start with his preliminary prayer. Then he'd break off into his fixing to get started prayer. Then he'd climb all the way up on his Mount Zion prayer. Then he'd sail his home all the way home on his River Jordan prayer. And he could sing the blues. Yes, he could. Sang the blues at Coffin Sugar Bowl. Sang the blues Thursday through Saturday night. He threw the house out the window every Saturday night. That's where he met Rose Lee. He'd hide his Bible English way to the side of his mouth so as not to drown it in all that rot gut he'd be drinking. The blues would start
from the middle of the earth, traveled his wide feet, gone up his body and boiled out his mouth. Hot blues, raw, as wet as rain, as equally as dangerous. I got a woman, lives on a hill. She says she won't quit me, but I loves her still. Eyes like diamonds and teeth that shine like gold. And when she kisses me, she'll soothe my mellow soul. I got a girl that live up on the hill. Yes, I do. And she says she won't quit me, but oh, I love her still. Reverend Battle didn't always keep to the middle of the road. Even after he met Rose Lee and married her, he would creep. Yes, he would. Well, oh! It ain't that I'm through being a sinner. I just want to take account of what I've done. You see, I've always had me 2, 3 women. I know it wasn't right, but I'd be a big man with a big appetite. You see, I figured I could jump the broom with the women a couple of 2, 3 times a week, then sweep it all in on Sunday with my calling to be a preacher. You see, Sunday was the only day of the week I was called to do the Lord's work. The rest of the week, I just let it rain. But then I met Rose Lee. I married Rose Lee. I married her with her big legs and her big smile because she hang the moon for me. She could love you so strong and right and tight. She was so fine, you drank her bath water. Well, I'd go down to Coffin and Sugar Bowl to sing the blues, be a day and a half coming home. Creeping. That's what I call it. Well, I knew Rose Lee, I knew her people knew. I heard them talking. Come home one night after one of my creeps. I'm getting undressed for bed. Rose Lee noticed I didn't have on my drawers. I must have left them somewhere. Now, she didn't say anything to me, but I heard her sister and her mother talking about how Rose Lee should put her foot down. I heard Rose Lee's mother say she should put her foot in my ass. Well, after one of my creeps, Rose Lee was in an accident, coming home from work. She do days work. I didn't know who she worked for. I don't know how Coffin from the Sugar Bowl found me. I don't know who I was shacked up with. I know I had my Bible with me. We went straight to the hospital. I just stood there. Her head was bandaged. Looked like it had been crushed. I just stood there crying. My pain hitting the floor. I wanted to know who did this, but I dared not ask myself that question because I knew somehow I was at the blame, but the cause was my creeping 2 feet that took me from our bed all over East Jesus. I wanted to cuss God and piss on my Bible. I knew that was low and unsanctified, so I just stood there. The Bible fell out of my head. I made my way towards the bed. I got on my knees. I was ready to bargain, cut a deal with the Lord. I said, what I need to do. Keep the gospel, I'll do it. Preach every day, I'll do it. Stop the creeping, never, never ever will I creep on this woman again. Just give me back Rosalie. I'll be faithful on that woman, that beautiful woman. I held her head in my head. I said, Lord, hear her. I prayed, but it didn't work. It was ugly prayer, slapping prayer. Oh, God, it didn't work. I said, God, damn it, do something. A voice came to me here. A voice said, your God's not big enough. There's no truth on your brow. I got up. I ran all the way back to the bottom. I got myself a wheelbarrow and I knocked on every door I could. Brother White, I need your Bible. He gave it to me. Sister Valina, I need your Bible. She gave it to me. Deacon Burton, I need your Bible. He gave it to me too. Sister Essie, now, I need your Bible. I need your Bible. She gave it to me too. I carried 100 Bibles back to the hospital. I pushed past the nurse. I dumped those Bibles at the foot of Rosalie's bed. I asked the nurse and the others to leave. I spread those Bibles out. I took Rosalie gently off that bed and I laid her on that Bibles. I held her head in my hands all night. She didn't move, she didn't stir, she didn't open her eyes. I didn't make Sunday service that next morning. All week the same. Thursday evening, come time to sing the blues at Coffin Sugar Bowl, and I said no. Just no. I've been through all that. I've been all that. Just teach me, Lord. Teach me. Don't let me abuse this woman. Teach me. Yes. Yes, you see where it's going? The Lord healed her. He didn't come when I first called him, but he's right on time. I know two things in this world. I love Rosalie and Rosalie loves me. And I'm learning, still learning, that you're going to have to wait on the Lord. He may not come when you first call him, but he's always right on time. You can't hurry God. No, you gotta wait. You gotta trust him and give him time, no matter how long it takes. Well, he's a God, you can't hurry, and he'll be there, don't you worry. He may not come when you want him, but he's right on time. Oh. Ezekiel said he saw him. He was riding on the well. And Daniel said he saw him when he was in the lion's den. Oh, you can't hurry God. No, you gotta wait. You gotta trust him and give him time, no matter how long it takes. He's a good God. You can't hurry him. He'll be there. Don't you worry him. Just wait on him. Put your weight on him. Well, don't hurry, go. Well, I think we'll take us a little break. When you come back, I'd like you to friend with a young man named Horace. He can fly. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Don't touch any of this. It's not ready just yet. We'll see you in 15. I often had the feeling from a very early age, around 5 or 6, that I would die young. Perhaps I had this sensation even before then. This may account for my reluctance to come into the world. My mother nearly died during 78 hours of labor. A vivid recollection of resistance, of wishing to forestall my early death by way of a tardy entrance into this life. And by the time I was in my teens, I was convinced of my fate, that I would die young. It was during this time I started keeping some dirt in my left front trousers pocket. This dirt was to be my quiet insurance or preparation for the grave. I got this dirt. Oh,
By the time I was in my teens, I spent most of it with my hand shoved around that dirt. I got the dirt from the colored cemetery along Baby Road in Lake Providence at the funeral of Squire Dix. Just before Pastor Bates nodded for the pallbearers to lay Squire in, I quickly scooped me up a handful of that damp soil, and I quickly housed it in my pocket. The mean, sultry month of August was the month Squire died. When the weather is angry and hot, and about everybody in Louisiana is hot and angry, and most of the folks is just plain hot. With that dirt in my pocket, be my insurance that if, or as I truly knew, when I died early, I would not have that surprised, startled expression on my face like Squire. With my hand wrapped around that soil, I'd have the jump on old man Ashes to Ashes and his cousin Dust to Dust, which I was sure Pastor Bates would intone at my funeral just as he was about to do over Squire. It had not been determined what or who had scared Squire, scared him straight to death. Whatever it was, he didn't see it coming until it was too late. Digger Odell, the undertaker, he had not been able to make Squire's eyes shut closed, and Squire's mama, Shirley Mae Cooksey, only allowed the casket to be open to review the remains at the gravesite, where most of the little ones would not be in attendance, lest they'd be frightened, or more probably tickled by Squire's clown-eyed expression. Anyway, by the downhill side of my 20s, I was convinced that I would not make it past 33 like Jesus. So on the day after my 32nd birthday, along the banks of Pearl River, one Sunday morning, I took that dirt out of my pocket. It was only a teaspoon by now. I held that dirt in my hand, and I slowly took a fisherman's knife out of my back pocket. I said a quick prayer. Jesus wept. The knife caught on the loop of my pants and skipped out of my hand. Damn, it fell into the river and nicked the head of a catfish which tried to bite me as it slithered through my legs when I waded into the water to get the knife back. There was a tiny drop of blood at the tip where it pierced the flesh of the fish. That knife was cool and wet against the palm of my dry left hand. I slowly traced the existing lifeline, which stopped 1.5 inches north of the bend of my wrist. I wanted to make this lifeline longer, but by how much? I mean, I didn't want to live forever, of course, but I sure as hell didn't want to see my maker before I was 60. I closed my eyes, I held my breath, and I counted to 10 slowly. I pressed the blade into the crevice of my existing lifeline. The blade was quickly warm and red against my hand. The blood, my blood, quickly covered the entire blade. My first thought was to withdraw the blade, but I knew I had to finish with my crude surgery if I ever hoped to make it past next year. Jesus wept. I cut deeper into the lifeline. If salt was tears, I was feeling them in my hand. I wanted to get home. I needed to get home. I started to run that way to home. But I didn't make it there. I sat down in the church, old Bethel AME. I sat in one of the pews to the back, to the left of the pulpit. Reverend Battle was pacing back and forth with a look of high seriousness on his Old Testament face. Oddly agitated, he drummed the Bible loosely against his knee, while behind him, the choir swayed left, and right in rhythm to the swoosh and trill of Sister Valina's hot organ playing. I was quickly carried up by one voice in the choir to a place beyond where I was sitting. And this new place, this otherwhere, was cool, fragrant with the smell of olive and the scent of camphor and anticipation. I could see the tops of everyone's head in church. Well, this intrigued me. I could see the top of my own head, sunk a little ways down in my seat, sitting at the back. This vantage point, I couldn't tell whether I was grinning or crying. I wasn't worried, though. I was floating, flying. I smiled. The more I smiled, the more the faces of the congregation came into view. First the forehead, then the eyes, brown, friendly. The eyes of the congregation were smiling up at me. What a sight. 400 smiling faces. I saw the whites of their eyes giggle, and 400 pairs of elbows and knees, young and old, granny, nephew, sister, mother, brother, father, saved and not yet saved. They waited and they listened all that way. They was waiting on the Reverend Battle, who seemed to have quite a burden on it this morning. They knew that Reverend Battle could soar with the word and that the word would fly. They had gathered to witness this flight. This congregation of color had forgotten, or maybe they didn't remember that they had forgotten, that they could fly too. And maybe it was this act of not remembering, not to forget to remember, that kept my flight above their eyes not seen, and the bones of the river unheard. The usual easy geography of Reverend Battle's faith was an astonishment. Tear-washed, it held and contained a different revelation now. He had not only directed his thought and his feet to the middle of the road, he had crossed his river and was celebrating the Eden earth on the other side. I remained aloft, held in that sweet suspension of ecstasy and death. Its absence of all shadow and all doubt rendered this sensation magnolia. Ooh. There was grace in that church. Grace in all of us beyond our desire. We should have been mean and ready to condemn. I could not see myself any longer where I had been sitting. Just a brightness, a whiteness louder than day. I had joined myself high above where my head had been. As I made my way slowly back toward the altar, I took that dirt out of my pocket and I gently whistled it into the air. The dust fell softly on the heads of the folk below. Now the congregation was of this soil, this dust. I awoke hours later standing on my knees in the middle of the river. Yes! Take me to the river. Take me to the river. Take me to the river and let me live. Take me to the river. Take me to the river. Take me to the river and let me. My grandmother, Mimi, the one I told you had the personal relationship with butter, she said, when you make some beans, you got to kiss the pot with a little garlic and onion. What you need to do is get a cast iron skillet, one that's about 50 some odd years old. Then you wouldn't need to put anything in it. But we're going to put a little butter in ours. So, take off his hat and reveal the onions. They're sort of like the infantry. Let them breathe a little bit before they meet their fate. Then we take some of the boneless cow, put him in there. Then you send in the onions. They're like the infantry. Then you chase them with a little garlic. Then shake them around a little bit. Turn on the heat. And before you know it, they're sauteing up like there's no tomorrow. Magic. There's not a day in my life I don't think of this remarkable woman. My mind travels to her as easy as rain. There was a disturbance in the sky this morning. Kitty Love must have come into the world on a morning such as this. It warms me to think so. Kizzy Love was born in Commerce, Georgia in 1838. There were 20 million people living in this country then. 2.5 million of them were slaves. 3 days in front of my 13th birthday, my mama died. And I was sold for the last time to the Sherman family. They run a nigger farm. I was fetched to be a breeder. I was sold by the 3 Nash sisters. They never married. They say it wasn't their sorrow that they had me. Those Nash sisters did every bad thing they could think of to me and to my brothers and sisters, just for spite. Wouldn't have to be doing no sass. They'd take my dress, pull it over my head and beat me across the front of my chest. They was lucky to get whatever Master Sherman paid for me. I was scarred bad. I hated this here world. There was just so much January in it. I wanted my mama. I sure miss my brothers and sisters. Jerry, Callie, Melvina, Joe, Snooky. Snooky was my heart. Things didn't get any better at the Sherman plantation. Master Sherman beat me too. He made me lay straight away with Mallet, his biggest and blackest buck. He frightened me. I put cloves in my mouth so he wouldn't try to kiss me when he did his business. He just squeezed my jaw real hard till the cloves slid out of my mouth. He did his business 7 more times before I became ripe and give issue after 8 months. They let me hold my little girl for 3 days. I was holding my little girl. I praised the gift of her birth. She was just so much angel in my arms, a comfort to me as wide as the day. She's my brown little heaven. It warmed my eyes to look on her precious face. I felt the tears behind my eyes, but my joy would not allow them to fall. I kept and held those tears in my body and stored them in my breast. I nursed my little girl. I called my little girl Ola. I was nursing little Ola when they took her from me. Master Sherman took her from me in the middle of the day. It took me a week before I could breathe. Another 2 weeks before I could speak, and 2 more weeks before I could open my eyes again. I still see her crying face in everything I see. Not long after that, I was summoned to the big house to wet nurse Master Sherman's child, tiny little boy called Aubrey. Sometimes I wish my milk would turn acid on that little boy's stomach. I really could not hold that thought. One little Aubrey's fault that Miss Mary, his mama, was too sickly to nurse him. Besides, Miss Mary was kind, even though Master Sherman beat me. Miss Mary made Master Sherman allow us church on Sunday. It was held in the birthing shack behind the slave quarter. First time I'm in there for church, I never seen anything like it. Folks lined up along the wall, wearing smiles of pain and jubilation, singing and shouting with upstretched arms. There was a blind boy at the far end of the shack singing with others and wearing a blue robe. He sang and frightened me. I never witnessed such jubilation. I cried. I cried out my little girl's name. I shouted out her name, Ola. Then I slumped to the floor. That little blind boy started walking towards me, almost skipping. Must have had wings on his feet. He was over my head in an instant saying, love, 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 love is your question. Love is your answer. I never heard that word before. It was a sweet biscuit on my mouth. Love. I thought it might be some kind of bird. It sure made me look up. I was gonna call my little girl what got sold. Ola love, love Ola. Not long after they took my baby from me, Master Sherman had to take Miss Mary to Atlanta on account of she weren't getting any better. While they were away, a storm arrived. It came on sudden. It sucked the minutes off the clock and made the morning sky midnight. That day was bruised. Then the earth and the sky collided first over the slave quarters, then the birthing shack. It lifted the birthing shack right up off the ground and tackled them black cussing clouds with a pitiful, powerful slap. The clouds won. That shack held no light. I heard their howling voices along with my own moments later, but they were just so much panic on the way. Their bodies already been killed. I felt the ground with my face. My panic and the wind kept me there. There was blood in my mouth and blood on that rail. I witnessed folks run out the back door of the big house for the cellar. I saw the thunder light the direction of the wind and point its vengeance at their scurrying feet. That house did not stand, nor did some of the best colored people I ever know. Nobody said but me survived. 257 heads killed. When Master Sherman found me, not conscious and covered with rubber, he beat me. Couldn't find little Aubrey. We looked for 2 days solid, from sun to sun, and found no trace of that little boy. We camped downriver 2 miles from where the house used to stand. I don't know what made me cross that river. Maybe I thought I heard my little girl cry. Maybe I wanted to escape. Maybe I just wanted to drown myself. Somehow I made it to the other side. I ran, and I ran along the banks of the river, through the trees. Thought I heard my little girl crying. My little girl Ola, what was sold. Something made me stop by this one tree. And there I saw it. A baby was lying in a nest of branches at the top of a poplar tree. Baby was crying, almost to a whisper. I climbed up that tree. I thought it might be my little old. My hands trembled as I reached for my little girl, my brown little head. Ooh, but this one was covered in mud. Every bone in my body broke and wept in that instant. It was little Audrey. He was crying and alive. My grief strangled the joy in my throat and murdered my soul to the ground. What was left of me held that child in my arms. I held that child in my arms and I wept. My tears streaked the mud on his little face. I gave that child my mama wanted. I gave him the love I needed to give to my little Ola. I held him in my arms in that tree till first light. I give it to God, and I crossed that river. Kizzy's little girl, Ola, was sold as chattel 3 days after her birth, along with 12 other babies that were born on the Sherman plantation that month. These 13 babies were sold by the pound. Their weight multiplied by 5, which is roughly the weight they'd be by the time of their 5th birthday. Master Sherman made considerable profit on his baby bartering, as he was relieved of the financial responsibility of housing and feeding. Feeding these children during their idle years. In August of 1856, Kizzy's little girl, Ola, was sold again to the Diggs plantation in Alabama, and she was given the name Joanne. At this new place, she was put to work in the fields. This mama little lost child, along with scores of others her age, would be roused every day, save for Sunday, to ride sack at 5 o'clock in the morning, first light. She'd be placed by one of the workers on the back of a burlap sack attached at the back of one of the stoop pickers. These were the pickers would work bent at the waist all day gathering cotton. After several decades of this stoop labor, these workers would be permanently bent, stooped, in this parody of morning prayer. The children would be placed on the bottom of the burlap sack and dragged along the rows of cotton to pick the buds closer to the ground. It was a bloody, hateful, hurtful business. But even the children, after a while, learned not to flinch at the continual cuts and bruises and thirsts and suffocating heats. After a month or two of this dusty oven of a harvest, you could not tell with any assurance where your skin ended or the dust began. Kizzy's little girl, Ola, little Saint Joanne of the fields. There's some situations in your life and sometimes in your life where you have just got to place yourself in the first room. I believe I came to one of those times today on account of the voices inside and around my head. I think they all be my mama's voice. Well, I ain't ever really seen my real mama. I spend most of my time working in the field, harvesting cotton and tobacco, looking after the children, or just worried about everybody and everything. Ma Beulah, the main house mammy, she learned me how to read. She my grace mama. She's reared me and she's led me to my river today. But my real mama, my blood mama, the mama in the soul of my ears is telling me to cross over. Well, I reckon and I just heart to hope today will be my last day in the harvest. Ma Beulah just told me for the third time, tomorrow y'all be 12 or 14. Ma Beulah likes you to skip a year when you leave your 11th. She don't think anybody should spend a whole year at unlucky 13. She told me, stow the ways of the field in my back and learn the dues of the kitchen. Well, that was mostly fine with me. Shit, howdy. I had all the dust and misery I ever wanted to purchase in those nigger-to-be-picked, God-abandoned fields. But I was a little uninclined to leave the noise and the harvest of the outside. That noise and the voices out there. Well, Mother was my pillow. Ma Beulah had fixed it so I could ride sack with her brother Calvin on odd number days out in the fields. After I grew to my 11th, on even number days, I give lesson on the Bible under a shade tree. I just open the Bible to the middle of Proverbs, verse 16 on one side of the page, verse 18 on the other, and we just sit there and let the wind blow the pages towards that day's lesson. Now, depending on time of the year, like September or August when it's kind of hot, we never made it much past Isaiah or the Song of Solomon. But if on a particular day we had a destiny for the Old Testaments, I just turns that Bible upside down and let the wind blow the pages back towards Genesis. There was always a good harvest in Judges or Deuteronomy, especially Exodus. That's the only book I could give lesson by heart, but I would read it out loud every lesson just the same. I think my first harvest was in the cotton. I was 5 or 6, pulled along row after row of angry cotton with only a teaspoon of air to breathe and even less water. But by the time I was 9 years old, I had determined the harder I worked, the better my real mama could see me. I didn't have any hope of ever seeing my real mama or even what she looked like. But I knew that if she ever came in front of my face, I would know it. I would. It would be like looking into a river and blessing yourself. Also, nobody on the plantation looked like me onto the appearance of my right foot, whereas my left foot had 5 toes on it, my right one had 6. I knew that my mama would have feet just like me. And something in that wind-blessed Bible that my mama remembered feet is telling me to move, to get on away from the Diggs plantation. Mr. Favor, the fat overseer, told me yesterday he's gonna make me a woman for my birthday. He wants me to meet him down by the shed near the pig slop. Shoot, I don't have any particular objection becoming a woman on this day. Most of the girls that look as grown as me already have babies, 2, 3, and I just soon look after one of my own. But I sure don't want to become a woman on Mr. Favor with his fat breath and his hands as thick as hams. I do like Ma B. learned, and I carry me some gravel and sand in my apron pocket. Any of the men's on the plantation might try to take you, but if you could get that sand in you before they tried their business, they'd mostly stop. Now, they liable to hit you afterwards, but that won't be the first time you was hit. So today, this day in front of my 13th, the voices inside of my head are telling me to place myself and my 2 feet in the first row. I'm so happy, glad my mama's voice found me and guided me and my 11 toes on the way from Alabama. It'd have been a fever down round my knees had I labeled my house to Mr. Favor. Oh, I was animal in my determination that night to put 12 miles between me and the Diggs plantation. On that first night, I had a notion to travel north. I pressed the moment the sun lost the sky, but I didn't know which way was. After 6 hours of steady walking, I was back at the Diggs plantation. I had circled my exit, but that rose to be a blessing on my journey. Alabama clay is a bit rough on the stomach and even worse on the feet. I was quick sneaking back in the shed with burlap bags of stove. I made 2 shoes for my feet out of them burlap bags. Then I was into the root shed. I counted out 7 turnips and 7
7 onions, one for every day of the week. If there was no free air for me to breathe, 7 days travel from where I was standing, I was never going to taste it. I also grabbed me one of the potatoes. That sweet potato's going to be my honey in the rock. I'd take a little bite of that sweet potato every morning. Ma Beulah was also on my mind. I knew that she would know that I was on my journey, that I was across my river. But I wanted to let her know I knew she knew. So I drew my name in the dirt and trusted the love of the Lord to allow her to see it. Moses. In the dark triangle that night, I made myself into a whisper on the wing of a dove. I howled at the wind. At last, I was going to be traveling north. My feet onward on the wind. Kizzy's daughter did indeed circle her and our people's exodus on up from the south. She made herself Moses to many thousands of underground railroad travelers. The length of many tears, mixed with the stench of hanging and burning flesh, was also along that freedom highway. The price of the ticket was always wrapped in hazard, possibly even death if you were captured by the nigger hunters. But our Moses, Kizzy's little girl Ola, little St. Joanne of the Fields, little Ola, what was sold on to slavery with less than 1 week of air in her body, ventured that risk. The voices in her head made tabernacle of her feet and guided and lighted her every step. She never lost a passenger, nor the full employment of her salty tongue in the service of those lodged in her care. You did not want to be on the wrong side of the counter if she made a determination to either move the mountain or blast her way through the center. The voices in her head guiding her Moses' feet every step of the way. I don't feel no waste time. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I can't believe he's brought me this far to leave me. I don't feel no waste time. Well, these beads are nearly ready. We now add our garlic and onion and our little pat of butter. And they're ready to eat. But before we eat, we always make a plate for one of the ancestors, one of the elders who are no longer here with us, but are all around us. We do this in the earnest hope and the silent belief that someone will do it for us when we've passed over. It's a way of saying you are remembered, you are held and contained in that heart, the ones you left behind. I'm making this plate for Elder Ira Lee, the blind lodge master I was telling you about. Yesterday noon this time, Brother Roy Jones went on home. He was the cream of the previous day, full fat. As the moment for the light of the dawn, and he gathered the light of the previous day like
so much cream atop the butter churn. Oh, it's a greedy feed. I rose this morning to curl my lips around the last bit of dawn. And I rise at this hour, full day in the morning. It's time for me to bless the bounty of my life and ponder as to why I ain't crossed over, why I should go on. Of course, when you rise at that hour, you gather the harvest of the previous day, the roots and the stoves, the wheat and the chaff. Most of what I tell y'all will be the truth. The other part don't deal with. Most of what I feel is my silent jubilation, my quiet hope that God has a plan. It's all the while I'm standing here. Yago for Ruru, Yago for Ruru, Hinya Chire, Hinya Chire, I will say Hibu, Yago for Ruru, Yago for Ruru, Hinya Chire, Hinya Chire, I will say Hibu. God indeed has a plan. I spent the better part of my life trying to figure out just what it is. The guy named Kevin, he's got a poker face. Y'all all heard the phrase, you are your brother's keeper. I always figured that my older brother, Theus, was to keep me. But it didn't work out. I remember one morning I got a call from my sister Renee. She said, how you doing this morning? I said, fine. She says, can you take any heavy lifting? I said, what? She said, our brother Theus has been killed, murdered. I don't remember much of what happened next. I dropped the phone. I know that I sat in that chair 3 times for the sun to lose the sky before I could move. I could not lift up my head. I felt ashamed somehow. I felt that I had abandoned my brother, and he broke, but did not bear. He was visited with a terrible menace, with such a swiftness that he took his life. And somehow, I felt it was mine. I spent a lot of my years trying to purchase some kind of mercy, the quality of which would make me feel better in my clothes, would allow me to stand in my shoes on my own bottom and enjoy my life and want to be here. Of course, I had no way of saving my brother in that instant. But you are your brother's keeper. One of the grace cookies that God gives us, we can munch on it any time we have an appetite for it, is that when we lose members of our family, we don't really lose them because they become your ancestors, and then they can speak to you from that other place. With such a swiftness and a clarity, makes your eyes giggle. Brother Theus gave me to understand, lo, these many years, that forgiveness for myself and that faith which I lack, and that other half-pound of dignity I was telling you about earlier, is all lodged in the heart, which is where the New Jerusalem always began. You just gotta bend forward. I'm happy to tell you today, not all the way on my journey, I started the first step.
The beans are ready. And the rice has arrived right on time. You know, if I had followed my first mind, I would have put some black-eyed peas in this jar. I don't know at what level I would have put them in. Now, we call it a black-eyed pea, but it's actually a bean. And in the big melting pot, it's a little of both. See, I'm going to open this jar and send these beans screaming into this bowl. Now, they get all mixed up. And everything you see in here is in here. Is in here, is in here. They're standing now shoulder to shoulder. Just something to ponder, as my granddaddy would say. You know, my granddaddy, he'd been the property of Jephthah Choice and spent the first 17 years of his life as a slave. He was bred to be a house nigger, a butler to his master's family. And it was when my granddaddy was in his 11s, he was blinded in his left eye by Jephthah Choice for learning how to draw his own name. You see, it was against the law in the state of Louisiana for a slave to read or write, or for anyone to teach him, punishable by severe penalties. Jephthah Choice's daughter, Constance May, who was 15 at the time, learned my granddaddy, how to draw his name. But she received no worriment for this, and came to no grief for her troubles. Granddaddy told me it was during this time, not too long after the surrender, that he determined he would learn how to read and write with his one good eye. Read things that were set down in books and in the Bible. Granddaddy told me Constance May felt very bad about what happened. And she took to having him sit underneath the table at supper time, very quiet like, with all the Choice family around. They didn't know he was there. Granddaddy told me he would lay his head on Constance's knee. She would silently, secretly, feed him bits of meat and turnips from the table, sometimes bread and nuts. Granddaddy told me it was during these times, underneath the table, with his one good eye, he did a lot of thinking. Mostly he thought about forgiveness, not only for Jephthah Choice, who had cost him his sight, but for Constance May as well, who was chiefly the cause. He also thought about why the Lord had given him this situation in life. With no two parents he could rightly remember, his mama and daddy having been sold to a tobacco plantation in Virginia when he was 3.5 years old. He pondered on the little mouse that would join him most evenings underneath the table with a few crumbs he would give him. It was good to share food with a living soul, even if it happened to be an old mouse with no whiskers. It's powerful good to share food, which we are about to do. One other thing, my granddaddy did learn how to read and write and walk himself through the Bible 10,000 times before he died. But way before he died, not too long after the surrender, Granddaddy told me he read his free papers with his one good eye to his old master, Jephthah Choice, who was completely blind and bedridden by this time. Matter of fact, Granddaddy told me he helped Jephthah Choice sign his own name. If I'm lying, I'm flying. And y'all don't see no wings. Lord, don't you move that mountain. Give me the strength to climb. Lord, don't you move that stumbling block. Lead me, Lord, around it. My way may not be easy. You never said it would be. But Lord, if I get lost, can't find my way. You told me put my trust in thee. That's why I'm asking you, Lord, don't you move that mountain. But give me the strength to climb. Lord, don't you move that stumbling block. Lead me, Lord, around it. Let's eat.